I'm very excited to be joined today by Ryan O'Neill, an entrepreneur that has an incredible story. Ryan has built a multi-million dollar company starting with just $600 that he won at a hackathon. But that's not even the most interesting part. The interesting part is that this was not his first attempt. So I'm anxious to talk to Ryan. Ryan, welcome to the Calling and the Climb.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad you've joined us today. I've got some things I want to ask you about. Now, I mentioned this was not your first attempt. You actually failed at your first startup. Is that right?
Oh, many of them.
So, can you tell me what did you learn that made the next one work?
I don't know that it depends on what number you come into. I wrote a blog post or a LinkedIn post. Man, it's been 4 or 5 years ago. I wrote this post of like, here's the 17 ideas I had that made over $1 that
Okay.
did or didn't work. And so every single one of them, you pick up little learnings throughout the process of every single one of them. The more notable one that I'm probably thinking about it was a mobile app startup, and it was something that would bring all of your communication together. So if you and I have emailed, we've texted,
Uh-huh.
we've sent smoke messages outside. I don't know, all these different ways we connected, and the conversations between you and I. But all of that communication separated up. So the original idea is like, what? Why don't I bring all of that communication and I just click on a name, and it brings up all of the communication. So if I click on Philip, it brings up all of our communication across any medium that we communicated on. Great idea. I still think it's a great idea. I have the patent on it.
Oh, wow.
For a couple of years, it was rolling around in the back of my vehicle, just because I spent so much time on it. But what I realized, like in that particular experience, I spent so much time um, trying to market it,
Uh-huh.
trying to get patents, build business plans, and I wasn't actually building something that people wanted.
Interesting.
Not,
Okay.
and not that they couldn't. It's just though I had no idea what I was doing with programming. I had an overseas team trying to build this app, and so I learned a lot of lessons about putting everything else before getting to progress and building something that people actually
Got
will
it.
pay money for.
Interesting. Okay. Very good. Now, so you are a developer, obviously, software
Uh,
developer.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I want to consider uh now in 2026 I'm a vibe coder,
Yeah.
but I it was technical enough that in my failed startup
Uh-huh.
I started getting all this bad code from India, and so I started learning how to just read through the code myself. I was like, this doesn't make sense.
So
They're not
self-taught.
understanding it. I would call it self-taught, but
Interesting.
I found I built the first version of my current company myself,
Uh-huh.
and then I found somebody else to come in and clean up my work and do a much better job than what I was personally doing at it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Your
sure.
company now, Curate. Just tell me a little. Tell everybody what Curate is, basically.
Yeah. So Curate is a software that automates the workflows of florists, caterers, event professionals. It's a proposal software online, so
Okay.
you can create a proposal for your clients. They can be able to sign, they can be able to pay, all from the same portal. But on the back end, the secret sauce behind our platform is you can be able to manage all of the small pieces. Like a caterer is never going to put napkins on their proposal, but they for sure want to make sure that they actually pack the napkins to show up on site and have all
Uh-huh.
those pieces. So our system not only creates a really seamless experience for what we call the grand customer, our customer's customer, creates an incredible portal experience for them,
Mhm.
but on the back end, it manages all the operational data between really running an effective event business.
Okay. So, and the inspiration, as I understand it, was from your wife.
Yeah.
Now, how so?
So the my wife was a florist.
Okay.
She actually grew up in Washington State, and she was a cashier at an Albertsons, and they had an opening up in the floral department. She took the opportunity. She became a florist, and then over the course of time, 2010, Pinterest, Instagram, they came out, and all of a sudden, no one wanted flowers from a book anymore. They saw mason jars on Pinterest and Instagram, and they said, "I want my wedding to be like that."
Okay.
And so there became a market that opened up for very custom special events. And so my wife had the experience being a florist. We started a company called Twisted Willow Design in St. Louis, Missouri that only did weddings and events. That's all that we did. We didn't do
Just the
Valentine.
floral part.
Exactly. We didn't
Okay.
do Valentine's Day flowers,
Interesting.
but we did the event design portion of it, where we're doing the flowers, where we're thinking about, how do all the pieces tie together really amazing. And so we were building those custom experiences. But in that process, we had a Excel spreadsheet that looked like Dr. Frankenstein had created it.
Okay.
It did not burn down any villages, but it came close, And so we had Google Forms up, we had free accounting software up, we had 4 or 5. We were at the kitchen table at one point in time, and I literally counted. We had like 8 to 10 different things. She had spreadsheets up and invoices and a physical sheet of the flowers she had to order. And it was in that moment that I was like, there has got to be a better way that all this stuff talks to each other. And so it was kind of in that moment when I realized, oh my gosh, yes, we could do this so much faster than we're doing it. That's when the moment kind of clicked about how we could automate that.
And so basically, the genesis of your company as it is today was you're probably not thinking I'm building a company. You were solving a problem, I'm guessing.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No,
Okay.
I did have it. I've like I said, I've tried 17 different things. So I
Okay.
always was trying to think, how do I build a
I
company?
understand.
But it was one of those moments where I was like, well, I'm seeing this problem for. I'm married. I almost said I'm married to the problem. That is not the case. I'm married to someone who's experiencing
There
the
you go. There you
problem,
go. Yeah.
uh, and I'm seeing firsthand the frustration when I still remember one time she told that she went to work with this couple. She said, "Hey, give me 7 days to put together a proposal for you," because it took so much
Wow.
nuanced legwork. And she said on day number 6, she was early. Day number 6, she opened up her email. She had the proposal completely finished, and she went and attached the proposal to an email. And she saw another email pop up, and it was from that bride saying, "Hey, we went with somebody else.
Oh my
Thanks for your
goodness.
time." And my wife had spent 3 to 4 hours plus the cost of a drink at Panera Bread to be able to try to help this couple, and she didn't even have a chance.
Yeah.
And it was kind of in that moment when you see somebody really going through a frustration, you're like, I've got to figure out a better way so that she's not feeling like she wasted half of
Mhm.
her week on working on something. So yeah, it definitely was from personal experience.
So then you hacked a WordPress template or something and made it into a web app? Is
Yeah.
that
This is way before AI. My gosh, if I had AI back then. But no, this was it. I just took a WordPress theme. I knew a little bit about, again, I wouldn't even call it programming, but I knew a little bit about PHP through
Mhm.
just customizing WordPress websites for people. And so I just started like using the WordPress infrastructure, and I started building custom tables on it and building these pieces of information in it. And I would get on something, I think it was called Code Mentor, and I went and found somebody that when I'd get stuck, I'd be like, I can't figure out how to do this. And then they'd get on, and in 5 minutes, they would do something that I had been trying to do for 5 days.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating, but it was, again, cool to see. And then I found a guy in that process after I started building it. I said, hey, can I just pay you to do this more often? And so he came in and he fixed all of the, for the techies out there. I had like I was doing running calculations on varchar fields, just text fields, and which is fine, but like you're supposed to have only you're supposed to be limiting your database to numbers in those fields. It was so bad.
We're going to
And this
geek out here. We're going to lose half our
right.
audience.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it was
I'm with you though. I love this stuff. I love
yeah.
it. I love it.
So he came in and he just cleaned it all up, all my work that I
Yeah.
had done for
So
sure.
do you think is there an advantage to starting ugly as opposed to everything
Oh,
being perfect?
Oh, absolutely.
And how
Like,
so?
what is it? I think Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, says if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of your product, you waited too late.
Ah.
Now, there is a little bit of fun here with AI because you can actually get to a really powerful, a good looking product faster than you could. But I am huge on building thin. You just got to build so thin. And if I hear people nowadays saying, well, yeah, I can't XYZ get my startup going because of this reason, and then 2 weeks later you're saying the same thing, like you aren't trying. Like you build thinner, find a thinner, smaller way that you can
Mhm.
solve it, and then see if people will pay for that.
Yeah.
And if they won't, well, great. Now let me build it a little bit more, but build the complete thought, but just build a really, really thin version of it.
Love
And so
it.
I'm a huge advocate. Find thin ways to create
That's good.
value. Everybody's trying to find the biggest,
Hmm.
boldest, life-changing new idea. But if you can just find a thin way to create value, you can always build on that
Hold
and
on.
make it more
That's great
complex.
advice. Great
Yeah.
advice. So I know in the beginning, initially, you bootstrap as
Mhm.
opposed to raising capital. Was that intentional or just of necessity? Or explain your reasoning on
Yeah.
that.
So the previous app that I had worked on, I had gotten about $35,000 worth of funding for. Most of that went to pay for the patent and some administrative stuff. And I realized like I was pushing off the hard learnings that I needed really, really quickly. Like it's one thing if maybe you've had another startup before and if you have successfully exited a startup for 6, 7 figures, okay, that's a different story. But if yeah, I hadn't at that point, and
Hmm.
I learned like some of my best learnings were from people telling me no, and from people telling saying, hey, it doesn't work for me for XYZ reason, and the more I was working on it and the more I thought, well, I'll take investment, we'll build the first version of this, I was pushing off the hardest and the most important learnings of my business, which is like finding what people need
Hmm.
and then building it. So from a bootstrap perspective, I realized like I had effectively wasted $35,000, which isn't a lot in the startup world, but it was a lot for
Oh,
me.
well,
It's nearly my annual salary at that point in time. So I realized like, okay, I don't want to do that again. So I had a simple rule, which was like, if it's important enough that I need to pay for it, then I'm going to make money for my customers to be able to pay for it.
that's good.
So I won a hackathon. Technically, I won $3,000 in a hackathon, and me and one other guy ended up doing all the work. And we had three other people at the hackathon who really weren't doing anything. So
You had to
we
split.
still had to split it,
Oh
but it
man.
was fine. It's whatever. So I took that $600, put it into the product. We ran a Kickstarter campaign. We didn't hit our goals, so we didn't get the money. But then I started messaging all of the individuals who sponsored it, saying, "Hey, would you still like to sponsor us?
Yeah.
Or would you still like to pay for our product?"
Yeah.
And so we just kind of took it from that approach and just
Wow.
started selling the product. Yeah.
So, what do you think is most misunderstood about bootstrapping?
Um. Wow. I feel like there's a lot of stuff. I think there I think so many times people completely miss the idea of bootstrapping because they're so enamored by quick success
Sure.
that money brings. They think, oh, if I just had more money, right? And they're lying to themselves, telling them if I just had a little bit more money, I could solve this quicker, better. And in reality, you're just gonna you if you have not learned how to do this with limited resources, you're gonna make worse decisions, bigger bad decisions with more resources. We over the course of our startup, I've raised somewhere around $3 million
Hmm.
for our company. If I had done that at the beginning, I would have wasted all that money. I would
Blown
have
through
had
it.
no idea where that money belonged, and what kind of economic models needed to be built around, like how much should I be spending in different parts of the company. So I think that's the big thing. I think so many times the biggest misunderstanding is people don't stop and think about it in the first place because they think, okay, if I just had money, I could solve these problems that I don't know an answer to. And in reality, if you're starting a company, you have to figure out the answer. You cannot hire somebody. I've wasted so much money paying for the top, I'm gonna quote it, top shelf talent who probably were really great people, but they came in and I was trying to pay them to come solve a problem that I hadn't spent the time to try to figure out and solve myself. So I think that's another big thing is people think that somebody else by having money, somebody else will come solve this
Yeah.
problem. But to be honest, it just doesn't happen.
Very good answer. Um, so, at some point, you move from building a product, which the Curate is a product,
Sure,
but you move from that to building a company. And so, what changes as what's required of you as a leader,
sure.
making that transition from building a product to building a company?
Yeah. And a lot of learnings baked into that. So, one of the big things for me is until the company was making enough to pay for my salary, I had another job. We found that once my goal was like 3,000 a month. Like, if, hey, we can bring in 3,000 a month, that can take care of my salary. I already had built a really efficient lifestyle. My wife and I had, so like we just had a phenomenal lifestyle. We had our own house, but I could still survive off that amount. I knew if I could just bring in $3,000 a month. Once I hit that, I went full time, and immediately our sales went up. So I'm spending my full time on it. I mean, there's a spike in our graph when that
Hmm.
happened. So that was kind of and the initial learning is just me investing more of my time into it. You see growth from it. And then when you're starting to move beyond just yourself running it and you managing yourself, you start to deal with a lot of human dynamics.
Yeah.
And I still remember the first people that we interviewed, like we had a job up and I was interviewing people. And
What type of positions?
yeah, like this particular position, it was like a marketing role. This one, I was like, man, we need a marketer. Let's bring in a marketer. And I still remember the first couple people in my wildest dreams, it would be the worst decision ever to hire that person. But when I was in the moment, I was like, well, no, this seems logical. I was convincing myself like this seems like a great person to hire. Because I had zero experience understanding like what is needed, and looking back now, seeing that ability to understand what's needed. So I think that's a big thing. You're going to make mistakes. You got to be okay with that, and unfortunately, you have to also deal with people mistakes. If you make a hire, that's not their fault, that's your fault, right? Like, so
Mhm.
then you have to start getting into the human dynamic of it and understanding this. And one of the hardest decisions that you have to do is always like, how do I make a transition with somebody? And sometimes it's like how to make a transition, but then the other side is like, how do I even identify before the hiring process that this person's going to be phenomenal?
Yeah.
And I will say that I actually have given up on that. And in fact,
Really?
I've heard of some professors of HR at some of these colleges that they said that studies have found that no matter how many rounds of hiring you go through, it's still a 50-50 shot.
Crapshoot.
Whether yeah, right. Like no one has this golden touch.
Yeah.
But what you'll find is within your organization, people will step up, right? And when they do, you make sure you keep that person, right? So it's less about, hey, do you have the perfect understanding of how to get this person in? Now, obviously, you want to have some basic
Hmm.
standards. You want to
Hmm.
learn who you are as a company. But it's more about seeing when that person comes in and they step up and they take responsibilities. How do I empower that person more? How
Yeah.
do I give them more responsibilities with it? So I don't know. I feel like those are some of the learnings that I've had. We
Hmm.
eventually built company principles and that we live by, and they're actually a really important part of who we are. But this was 9 years in that we built the company principles. We had some before, but we just didn't have a good idea. Whenever you build company principles, hopefully this is helpful. But whenever you build company principles, you want to write things that not everyone's excited about. If you're like, we're innovative, well,
Uh,
everyone
Pick
thinks
one.
they're innovative,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but like for some of our company principles, our very first company principle is built in ship fast, then make it better. Well, there's some people they're diametrically opposed to that idea of building thin and shipping fast. They're like, no, we want it to be comprehensive, we want it to be thought
Hmm.
out, which is great. And
Hmm.
and maybe you can do phenomenal at some company where you're a good fit for. At Curate, whether you're building a new process, whether you're building a new feature, we're going to build thin, we're going to ship fast, and
Hmm.
then we're going to make it
Yeah.
better. And so, like, finding these key things that are going to make your company or make it, how to say this, help you find people that are excited about things that other people are diametrically opposed to, but you just can't know that up front. It's something you have to grow
Yeah.
into.
So I'm curious because my company was a tech company. So
Sure.
I'm very comfortable working with computers
Yep.
and I used to be a programmer, so can sit in front of a monitor all day long. I don't mind interacting with
Sure.
the computer. Was there a learning curve from you from doing the WordPress hack or whatever it
Sure.
was you were doing to dealing with people?
Oh, for sure.
And was that a learning curve? Taught me through that. How,
Yeah, well, my personality has always been finding, I enjoy solving problems. I am not a talker. I'm not someone who, enjoys the process of getting to know someone better. And I really like people, but it's just hard to bridge that. My wife is phenomenal at it, and she's evened me out a lot. And so I'm much more like, well, there's a problem, let's go solve it. And I enjoy the process. I enjoy escape rooms. That's some of my best bonding time is when we're locked in together and we've got to figure out how to get out together. So there was a jump there for sure. My personality, probably, and again, I'm thankful for. I've got one of my co-founders is in Bulgaria, so what you would call a sole founder. I built it myself, but then I brought on additional people, and he is just his personality is such an even keel. He just doesn't care. He's just like, all right, well, we'll do that. That sounds good, And so like, I wouldn't be where I'm at today had I not found a
so you feel like that's
personality.
important then to your success,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
balancing.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Finding somebody that in his situation, there was nothing I could say that could offend him, or that he could read wrong, or be like, "Oh, how's the boss? I don't think the boss likes me today." Like, it's just he just was like, "Well, no." And he was a phenomenal team member. He's a great.
Hmm.
He actually was a WordPress developer, so he came in and fixed a lot of the problems that I had done, even though we were building an actual application out
Hmm.
of it. So, finding personality to work well with your personality, because everyone's going to have quirks or particular need sets.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important thing. But a lot of this, really the key thing is once you're getting past 8, 10 team members, then that personality aspect matters more, or you saying something and getting it lost in translation. But when you have 4 people or 6 people, I still don't even know that you have to worry too much about that. Just enjoy, just hang out with the person, make sure that you're, um, you know, being amiable with them.
Hmm.
But then again, knowing that person's goals, because some people want a job where they can connect, with people in a deeper way, and some people. I've got some phenomenal team members. They just like to work. They just like to have. They like to solve problems themselves
Yeah.
too. And we'll start our day with some of the team members now, when we'll exchange some pleasantries, and we really are interested in each other's weekend. But 2 minutes in, we're back to work.
That's
And
it.
we're okay with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's to answer your question, that it is a hard jump of making that jump, but every culture, and you just have to know yourself and know. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, you need so much diversity in your startup," and I actually, when you're really, really small, I disagree with that. You need to
Okay.
find a couple people that because there's enough problems that you're going to have different opinions on, but you need to all be able to have a single mindset. So you actually, like, for lack of a better way to say it, in some areas of all 3, 4, 5 year life, you need to have the same mindset. You don't need to have diverse mindsets, because you're
Interesting.
solving one single problem, and it's not about the color of your skin or the level of your education, but all of you think the
That's
same
good.
way,
Hmm.
and you're hammering at that problem together, because once you get to 10, 15, 20, you're automatically going to have different viewpoints and things that come in. And if you haven't solved that initial problem yet, but then you're trying to find all these other things to disagree about, then you're going to lose focus on actually building that thing. So
Yeah.
I would really advocate, find somebody who's on your same wavelength up front, solve the really thin, really focused problem, and then start to get it. Once you have traction doing something very bold and visionary, then it's a lot easier to hire and have wider perspectives coming in, and being able to question things more, because you've already figured out your initial model, and
Hmm.
then you can make sure that it's foolproof for scale.
That's good. So you have done that very well. You started small and you grew it, and you now have a phenomenal company. You're blowing and growing, really, really growing. We've talked some about that previously, but I just wonder, as a founder, much of our energy is getting the thing going,
Right.
getting the momentum. But now, once the momentum is there and it's going and it's going well, what keeps you up at night now?
Sure. That's always a bad question for me, because I can always hit my head on the pillow, and I can just go to sleep.
Well, good for
But
you.
I think
Good for you.
I think I know what you're talking about. One of the benefits of our particular model is we have recurring revenue. So then, that from our perspective, we don't have to go win new jobs. We just have to really support our current customers. But some of the big problem sets that we had, and we've actually just come out of a season where we rebuilt our entire platform. That was one of the most challenging times. And I always ask the question of, like, hey, was it worth it to it? I love the results of us rebuilding the platform, but it was so hard on our team, on our customers, to
Just
be able
putting
to
it
make
on a
it.
new, updated
Yeah, taking all the code that Ryan
technology.
O'Neill had his names on the Git commits, and ripping all that out and saying no, let's build it. So because of the foundation we had, we could really only have one, maybe two developers in the code at the same time. Because everything was touching. If you wanted to send an email, to get super technical, if you wanted an email sent, there were four different functions for sending an email, when it should have been one.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have to go and update. If you wanted to update how something works, update it 5 and 7 places throughout the code for it. You should have built it. So we had a huge limiter in our classic code. So we said, hey, let's rebuild it. We want to scale. We want to help much larger customers. And in the process of rebuilding, it was really rough, because in one thing, again, this is a learning to. This kind of bleeds what we previously were talking about, the human aspect, but also
Hmm.
the scale aspect of it. I went and I brought a lot of really advanced people in that I was like, these people are going to kill it. I'm just going to be able to let them come in. And this is 6 years into the company. I'm going to let these people come in and they're just going to do a phenomenal job. And what I learned was I was trying to bring in people that I could empower, but I actually didn't need to have a less bold vision. I actually needed a more bold vision because I was bringing in people. I mean, again, if I told the companies that you came from, you'd be like shocked. I brought in some top shelf people, but I was trusting them to do something that I had the experience in setting a vision for, and I didn't set a strong enough vision and a bold enough vision and let the team know, no, this is the direction we're going. And then that caused a lot of like internal issues where people were struggling with like, oh, well, I thought we were building this, and somebody's saying we're building this, and like it seems straightforward, but when people say, no, we're going to build a better version of it, it's kind of going to be like what our old one was, but a better version of it. But then you have our customer success people who are talking to the customers every day saying, "You're saying what? We're not building this thing that's really important to customers." And so there's a lot of internal conflict, and a big part of that was because I was trying to be a good leader and take a step back and empower people to rebuild a platform from scratch. And so what I found was in that rebuild process, we didn't just rebuild the platform, we had to rebuild the entire team. So
Interesting.
some of the biggest struggle points for us weren't necessarily software related, but it was about saying, hey, how do we get the whole company on board with a new direction or with something different that we're doing? And in the end, it's been phenomenal, like the results of it. But that process was really tough. It was very, very tough.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned the word scale, and you've been in the process of scaling your product and doing phenomenal. I'll mention again. So with your success, how do you, Ryan O'Neill, stay grounded?
Yeah. Well, I've got a phenomenal family.
Okay.
My family is the most important thing to me, hands down. I've got two little boys and a little girl and a wife, and really like there's nothing I'd rather do than be with them. So that's been a big thing for me. I because we're a remote company, I can travel. We love to travel, so my youngest is 5 years old at this point. She's probably been to 17 different countries.
Oh my word.
So like I'll just work, like I'll be in Spain and we'll go out and see some of what is it, La Sagrada de Familia
Yeah, yeah,
during the day, but then at 5 o'clock I'm on and I'm working for the next 6 7 hours with my team, and so that's been a big thing is still trying to be able to make sure that I can be able to build memories with my family. I'm very involved with my church, so very involved in the ministry called Bible quizzing, and that's something that I'm personally passionate about. So I'm always contributing and building. I've written a book on being a parent for Bible quizzers. My two sons were on a team last year. We got second place in the nation at Bible quizzing, and that I'll work a full day, wake up in the morning, work a full day, and then I'll come home and quote my kids for an hour or 2 hours,
yeah,
on our scriptures. And so that we found intentional ways to be able to spend time together with my
yeah,
family, but then do things that we're passionate about.
yeah.
So that's been a big thing for me. But to be honest, there's a lot of people they try to, as an entrepreneur, they try to juggle it all. They want to keep their health, they want to keep their family, they want to spend 80 hours a week working, and at some point I feel like you have to decide. For me, I don't take care of my health at all. I've got a wonderful wife, and she makes sure we have healthy food in the house, and so I'm thankful for her. But I don't. I don't have a healthy workout routine, but I've got a phenomenal family, and I got a phenomenal company, and I feel like at some point, if once we get out of startup mode, if you will, whatever that looks like, I'll have the time and capacity to do that. But for me, that was the ball like the ball of family, but then still being able to invest in it. Those are things that I didn't want to drop.
Hmm.
And then all the rest of it can come later. But I don't have a lot of close friendships where I'm, hanging out with the guys. I'll play in a softball league every so
Hmm.
often.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of that stuff like friendships or stuff like extracurricular hobbies that I
Hmm.
just don't care about
Hmm.
because something has to drop, and
That's a good
you
point.
have to pick and choose what that thing that's going to drop is.
I heard that she had a men's conference one time, and the speaker was talking about you're going to cheat in some area of your
Mm,
life, your work, your family, your
your health, yeah,
recreational time,
yep,
your health, whatever
yep,
you choose.
right,
And I think you choose wisely with your
Yeah.
family. Sounds like you have a phenomenal family. And I've
Yeah.
met your family, so
Yeah.
they are phenomenal. Well, okay. Well, one last question, Ryan.
Sure.
We have some people watch this podcast that are entrepreneurs that are in various stages, but there may be somebody watching that wants to start a business, but they're afraid.
Sure.
What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing they have to ask is what is their life goal? I've talked to so many people that are like, oh, I want to start a business, and th- I was talking to somebody just the other day, and there's all these ideas and things they were spitting out, but in the end, they just wanted to be independent. They want to be able to be independent of financially independent.
Sure.
And there's multiple ways to get to that, right? So you do want to ask that question: is this the route that I want to go? But if that is, then I always ask people, and this always gets people who ask me this. They never know the answer. It's like, well, but how much do you need to make? That's the number you need to make. So if you're like, no, I want to go full time on this business, or maybe the goal isn't to go full time. I've got a project right now that I'm doing for Bible quizzing that I've run the math on it. If every Bible quizzer in the nation uses it, I still couldn't go full time on that.
Yeah.
And that's impossible to get 100% of something. So you have to decide, to your point, if I'm starting the business, what's the goal of the business? Is it to replace my income? Is it something that I'm passionate about, but I don't want to lose money on? What is that goal of the business? And so I think that's the first thing you have to come to reality on. And then the second is, am I willing to put the time and effort into being able to make this happen? I'm a big believer in not taking shortcuts, but at the very same time, you don't have to get $20 million of investment to be able to start something and create value. And that's controversial. There's a lot of people that say, yeah, well, in your space, that's okay. I believe you can do it in any space. But obviously, there are some that are more beneficial than others. And so you need to ask that question for yourself if you're thinking about starting a company. Maybe the area that I want to start in is not where I need to start in. I need to start in some other area. So if you want to buy houses, or if you want to do something that requires a lot of capital, maybe start in some other area and then build into that.
That's good.
I talked to one guy, and he was wanting to build this really technical security tool. He's like, man, I've got this phenomenal thing that will change security forever, but I want to bootstrap, but I don't want to raise all kinds of money for it. And so he's kind of in that nervous period. And I said, well, don't start in the really technical security side. Start in something that is still technical, but really, really thin, that all the people doing the security need, and that would help them. So build something really thin, really simple. If you want to start a company, get to market as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Don't perfect it. Find out really quickly, and then you'll find out the big question of, like, am I willing to do this for 8 to 10 years? Because if you get to market really quick, and everyone's giving you a bad time or leaving bad reviews, and you realize, like, this is not the life for me, I would much rather you find out on month number 2 than year number 2. Right, like, because then you wasted 2 years of your life doing something you're not passionate about. So
Good
I
point.
think it is valid to be to have some jitters, to have some what do they call it whenever you impersonator, what is it called again when you
Imposter syndrome.
imposter syndrome?
Yep.
That's what it
Yep.
is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's totally normal to have imposter syndrome. But I'm a huge advocate of find a very thin way. If the big idea you have, you can't do immediately, find a smaller, thinner, easier idea to get to a market, and then to find out, hey, number one, am I enjoying this? Number two, like, is this growing enough for me to be able to, or do I see that this could grow enough for me to be able to hit that goal? So define that goal and then get to market as soon as you can. And then you get to find out yourself
Yeah.
whether it's going to work or not very quickly.
They call it small business for a reason.
Oh, that's a
You
great
start
point. Yeah.
small. You
Yeah.
start small. I think that's the whole theme I've gotten from you. It's really, really good advice. And
Yeah.
appreciate you being with us here today,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
That's
I hope it's been
fascinating.
helpful.
And best of luck on Curate and what the future holds for you.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Thank you for having me.
All right.